wonder if you could tell the students the highlights that got you here.
The highlights. Well, I graduated in 1978, which was just post-punk, and an era you were part of, Richard, in your days in the.
Though I was much younger. About
that, and I started putting on gigs around Manchester that could be called punk, with groups like The Fall and lots of groups who you probably never heard of these days. But it involved Joy Division and bands like that. I then became a student union guy, working full-time for a student union in Manchester, which really put me on the heart of things. Everybody wanted to play, and it included a gig with New Order. And
I just add there that this was in the days when students' unions organised gigs.
Yes.
Wasn't it? Yes.
And to be honest, it's a great shame they don't anymore, but we'll perhaps come back to that. And so I started putting on lots and lots of gigs, started working with a couple of Manchester promoters who'd been the promoters at the world famous Tony Wilson's Factory Club, although it wasn't Tony Wilson. And suddenly I was part of the Manchester music scene, got tired of it when they asked me to be the assistant manager of the Hacienda, and then 2 days before the Hacienda opened, told me that I wasn't going to be the assistant manager, which I wasn't too bothered about. Moved to London and started producing much bigger artists, bringing American artists over like Curtis Mayfield, Gil Scott-Heron. Did a lot of work for local authorities who were very proactive in those days. I worked for Greenwich Council, moved to Manchester again and became a festival director in Manchester. I've also owned radio stations. I now run the Manchester Food and Drink Festival and all sorts of things like that. I've been an agent, I've been a promoter, I've been a manager, I've been a PR person, I've been a record company. Lots of times, not just once, but lots of times. I've just started a new record company, for example. So I've always punted in and out of the music industry. And some people would call it a 42-year-long career.
And management in all of that, do you have a definition of what management entails from your experience?
Well, there's two ways of managing things. There's one, finding a band or a new artist who's completely at the beginning of their career, or maybe just started their career and gone up one rung on a ladder of 10, and you guide them through the whole career, which is, the whole management. You basically become the voice of the artist. You often make decisions on their behalf. You kind of almost run their life in the right direction, always with cooperation from the artist, but you can often be quite tough on that one and say, no, that's not the right thing and this is the way we're doing it. You find out. The other way of managing people, which I did, for example, with the poet John Cooper-Clarke, is start working with somebody whose career is very established, and they you kind of manage their life almost. You become part of the band. So it's really just direction of the artist, either right from the start or quite a long way down their career. Or in John's case, for example, the twilight of his career, but bringing him back to the great public notice he has now.
Yes. I think you or somebody told me that he doesn't wear a watch, so he doesn't know what time of day and night it is.
Well, to be fair on John, he has a natural instinct about what the time is, especially when he's on the road, because he knows what time his stomach tells him he should be having his dinner, which is 6 p.m. You have to remind him it's an hour till 6 p.m. because he's always sat in his hotel room watching a black and white movie that you or I have probably never heard of, but he's watched 80 times. So no, he doesn't really keep a watch, which means he doesn't go to bed at a set time, and it doesn't mean that he gets up at a set time. But that's his life. But when you're on the road, he's always up for his breakfast. Somebody has to knock on his door.
Yeah, and you're his manager for that.
Well, I'm certainly his manager for that. I employ a kind of assistant tour manager who goes around with and drives John to all his gigs, and all bands who are on the road will not have, unless they're right at the start, will not have their manager necessarily running things on the road. They'll have somebody who's far better at being on the road. A manager should be in the office making the phone calls. not running
Ah,
around, hanging around at sound checks. Although, you know, I do like being on the road with John because it's really quite civilised. As I say, we have dinner in a good restaurant at 6:30 every evening. We leave about 11:30 in the morning, wherever we're going. So there's a nice routine. But a tour manager of a big band touring with articulated lorries and lots of musicians and crew needs to be on that job and not working out the deals in the future.
right. Let's talk about producing a tour rather than managing a tour. Where does it all start? Does it start with an agent phoning you up and saying, you know, Dolly Parton's putting out another album, a new album next year? Is there room for a tour in Britain or something like that?
Funny enough, Richard, that actually happened to me once. I work with a certain number of agents very closely and have done for probably 30 years. They're national agents. They deal with artists touring all over the UK and probably all over Europe, and every chance that they also represent the artists in Japan and Australia, not in America. America's often a whole different ball game, so they're self-sufficient. But a London-based agent did phone me up one day and say, Dolly Parton has recorded a different kind of album that she normally makes with a bunch of from Louisiana, not the Nashville sort of ones, the ones really from the backwoods where she grew up. And she's even got a version of Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin on it. And she wanted to do a tour. And I was like, well, so how can I be involved? You know, but to be honest, Dolly Parton's a bit above my level, or certainly was then. This is about probably nearly 15 years ago. And he said, no, she wants to play the kind of concert you work in, e.g. the Bridgewater Hall in Manchester, where I was pretty much the in-house programmer. So I took on a Dolly Parton tour. He phones me up or sends me an email, whatever, you know, Dolly Parton, she's in London on this date. She needs 3 other dates, perhaps Birmingham, Manchester, Newcastle, that kind of thing, on the 23rd, 24th and 26th or whatever it was. So I immediately get in touch with the venues that they're interested in playing in, find out if they've got those dates available, or what they've got available, or even what the status is, as in, is somebody else holding the night? And I could say to them, look, I can confirm Dolly Parton tomorrow. That other person has to say, well, we'll let the whole go, or you take on the date. So there's a lot of scheduling needs doing. Also, you're not going to go Newcastle, London, Manchester, London, Liverpool. You're going to try and go London, Manchester, Liverpool, Gateshead, or Newcastle, or better still, Newcastle, Manchester, Liverpool, London. So people need to know things are going to be in a good order. You then talk to the venue. Let's assume everything goes well, and you've got the 23rd, 24th, and 25th back to back. London, Liverpool, Manchester, Newcastle. I then go back. I work out what the costs of staging the events are. There's a venue arrangement. Sometimes that's a flat fee. Bridgewater Hall, Liverpool Philharmonic, that kind of thing. They would charge. Well, Bridgewater Hall certainly would charge £8,500 plus various other additional security costs and all that sort of stuff. You then have to work out, well, how many people are we going to be able to fit in the Bridgewater Hall with Dolly Parton? We knew it was going to sell out, but sometimes you have to work out whether it's going to do 1,200 people or 1,500 people or halfway between, and then work out what the ticket price is that's going to allow you to cover Dolly's fee, or a reasonable fee for Dolly, and all the venue expenses, all the marketing expenses, all the security expenses. The Performing Rights Society, the PRS, will take 4.2% off the top now of the income for a show and distribute it amongst their members. So there's a lot of costs, posters, PR, Facebook ads, security. I mean, in a venue like Manchester Apollo, for example, you spend nearly, on top of the hire fee, nearly £3,500 paying for the security. So expenses are very high. You have to, the thing I have to judge is whether I can charge a sensible fee, ticket price that people will pay to allow me to get all the expenses back and some profit to make it worth my while. And that's what I do for a living. And, you know, at the moment, I've got 3 different tours that I'm juggling for the new year, one of which is rearranged from the autumn. And they're quite similar artists, sort of Americana artists. and I'm trying to juggle all these sort of venues like Liverpool Philharmonic to put them in so they're far enough apart, so we're not trying to pull the same audience to the very similar acts at £36 a ticket in the same week. And it's actually quite hard when you're doing that in 10, maybe 12 different cities in the country. So there's a lot of skills involved in what you do. I could also talk about a very famous gig from our area, the Northwest Spike Island, where the Stone Roses play, where it's just one gig, but it's one big festival gig, and it had to have an impact. And weirdly enough, it's nearly 30 years ago since we did that. But it's just the same thing. You have to be able to make sure that the staging company, the big outdoor staging company, can come in. You can have enough security on that day and all the rest of it. So, and also that the band can do the gig, obviously. But in that instance, the band told me the date they wanted to play. But then you've got to bring in all the kit and make sure it can all arrive. And the police have got to be happy and everything else. So there's a lot of to-in and fro-in. New things arrive every day. You get used to it. It's not an easy job, and that's why there are not probably more than 100 concert promoters in the country.